Hello students, today we will take up the 13th chapter titled Women in the Food Chain, written by Vandana Shiva. So this is a passage and it is an extract from Vandana Shiva's Staying Alive book. She is a well-known environmentalist and has been very active in bringing ecological issues to the foreground. In this particular passage, the reference is to the Green Revolution. The writer points out that it was not such a big revolution because it attacked the very basis of agricultural economy. It was possible to increase the produce, but at a very heavy cost. Women who are more closely linked to the earth and to the responsibility of preparing food have been sidelined in this revolution, and many ordinary sources of sustenance have been eliminated. So, to begin with, the writer says that nature and women have historically been the primary food providers in natural farming based on sustainable flows of fertility from forests and farm animals to croplands. The food system has always included the forest and animal systems in its process. The women of Chipko fight, in which they used to hug the trees when they were about to be felled, bringing the sign that trees were more important to them than their lives, and they were ready to lay their lives for the tree. The feminine principle of food production is based on the intimate links between trees, animals, and crops, and on the work of women in maintaining these links. Women's work in agriculture has traditionally been work in integrating forestry and animal husbandry with farming. But the author says that the masculinist paradigm, that is the pattern of food production which has come to us under many labels of green revolution, scientific agriculture, it involves the disruption of essential links between forestry, animal husbandry, and agriculture, which have been the basis of sustainable model. The renewable base of agriculture provided by women through carrying green manure and fodder to farms and carrying composite and organic matter to fields has been destroyed by this agricultural revolution, and it has replaced renewable inputs from the farm by non-renewable inputs from factories, and this has displaced women's work in providing sustainable inputs. Now, this pattern, which results in disruption of nature's ecological cycle and displaces women from maintaining those cycles, sees this process of fragmentation as one of increasing efficiency. Market efficiency and profits do increase through fragmentation, but at the cost of nature's capital in fertile and living soils and the destruction of women's work in keeping the inherent fertility of soils alive. What has happened is ecological destruction has come, and it is one inevitable result of this commercial outlook, and economic deprivation is the other, because production for profits instead of needs has excluded larger number of women and peasants from food production, and the fact is that large number of poor people in the third world are victims of hunger and famine today, and it is intimately related to a patriarchal model of progress which sees sales and profits as indicators of well-being and thus destroys the real well-being of people. So it is from this ecological perspective that focuses on nature and needs that it is impossible to see, which has been called scientific agriculture, and the green revolution is in reality Western patriarchal anti-nature model of agriculture. So Further, the writer observes that in the ecological perspective, it is impossible to see food production as distinct from forests, water, and animal systems. Movements by rural women to protect forests or rivers have always been rooted in protecting their agriculture base, and for this, the Chipko women forests provide food, and the movement to protect them is a movement to provide food to their families. So, this movement, which became famous in 1974 when women of Reni protected their forest, they told the contractors' men that the forest is their mother's home. When they have food scarcity, they come here to collect fruits for their children, and they collect herbs and ferns and mushrooms. So do not cut these forests, otherwise, they will embrace the trees and protect them with their lives. So in 1986, the Chipko women of Nahikala were protecting their forests for food production. The link between forest and food is clear to the women who produce food in partnership with trees and animals. The patriarchal model, in contrast, sees forestry as independent of agriculture and reduces the multiple outputs of the forest, including fertilizer and fodder, into a single product, that is, the commercial wood. Animals are no longer seen as providing fertilizer and energy for agriculture, and through the white revolution means the milk production is the only basis of animal husbandry, and it is reduced to the production of milk for centralized dairy industry. Organic inputs from forest and animals are no longer seen as mechanisms for conserving soil moisture. Large dams become the patriarchal option for providing water for food production, and we see that the organic manure is no longer a fertilizer. It is fertilizer factories that are seen to be only source of soil fertility. Rich soils and appropriate cropping patterns are no longer mechanisms for pest control, and in the name of pest control, poisons for killing pests have become an inevitable component of patriarchal agriculture. The author further observes that people, cattle, and living things derive nutrition from the soil through plants, trees, and vegetation, and returning nutrition to the earth is therefore central for maintaining the food cycle and sustaining the productivity of the soil. So, Howard, who was a scientist, he saw in India's peasants a knowledge of farming more advanced than that of West. He recognized the secret of India's sustainable land use as lying in the return of organic matter and humus to the soil. A balance between livestock and crops was always kept in order to maintain the food cycle and return organic matter to the soil. The method of mixed cropping is a part of adaptation of nature's ways in which cereals like millet, wheat, barley, and maize are mixed with pulses which provide nutrition to each other and thus a balanced diet to the people. So, mixtures of crops give better results than monocultures, and Howard notes that in India there is another instance where peasants of the East have anticipated and acted upon the solution of one of the problems which Western science is only now beginning to recognize. So, this rotational cropping is another strategy for maintaining the nutrition balance in the soil, and especially the leguminous plants like pulses. Although it was till 1888, after a protracted controversy lasting 30 years, that Western science finally accepted the important part played by pulse crops in enriching the soil. So, shallow and superficial plowing was the fourth aspect of sustainable land use, and it was recognized that too much cultivation and deep plowing would oxidize the reserves of organic matter in the soil, and the balance of soil fertility would soon be destroyed. So, the concept of sacred earth as inviolable was also a constraint in overuse and destruction of the soil. So, women's work in organic agriculture also supports the work of decomposers and soil builders which inhabit the soil. Organic manure is food for the community of living beings which depend on the soil. Soils treated with farmyard manure have from 2 to 2.5 times as many earthworms as untreated soil. And farmyard manure encourages the buildup of earthworms through increasing their food supply, whether they feed directly on it or on the microorganisms it supports. Earthworms contribute to soil fertility by maintaining soil structure, aeration and drainage, and by breaking down organic matter and incorporating it into the soil. So thus the earthworms also they play very important role, although they work invisibly in the soil is actually the tractor, the fertilizer factory and dam combined. Worms work soils are more water stable, and then unworked soils and warm inhabited soils have considerably more organic carbon and nitrogen than the parsned soils. So he says by their continuous movement through soils, the earthworms make the formation of channels which help in soil aeration, and it is estimated that they increase soil air volume up by to 30%. So these soils with earthworm drain 4 to 10 times faster than soil without earthworms, and their water holding capacity is higher by 20%. At the end, the author suggests that these earthworms they help in building soil fertility and has also not been seen as doing productive work or providing an input to the food economy. So she says we'll need to look beyond the mentality that tells us that fertility is bought from fertilizer companies. We need to look beyond the fertilizer factory for maintaining soil fertility, and we need to recover the work of women and peasants who work with nature, not against her. In regions of India which have not yet been colonized by the Green Revolution, women peasants continue to work as soil builders rather than soil predators, and it is from these remaining pockets of natural farming that the ecological struggle to protest nature are emerging.